Hello, old friend. Hello. How are you? Yeah. So many fond memories. 1955, 12th of February I was born. I started cross-dressing at the age of 4 or 5. I look at these photos and think, you poor sod, what you have to deal with. And nobody can help him. I couldn't help him. Excuse me. It was a bit scary as a child, as a teenager. And then I went into early adulthood and met a girl from high school. And we started a relationship that I thought, now I'm going to be normal, heterosexually normal. It wasn't until I left that relationship and I started another one, which lasted 15 years, that I started to be able to develop the personality that I am now. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I was up on a mountaintop that I suddenly had an epiphany. Finally, I knew what I was. And that was wonderful. The only trouble was when I come back to tell my partner, she said that you would lose everything, and it scared me again. So I withdrew, but not wholly, because once the lid to the box was open and Tina was poking out, she couldn't be put back. She was too strong, her personality too vibrant, too exciting, too out there. About 2 years ago I was away with a group down south, and they went into the bush.
And he came pick us up in the vehicle, and he had shaven his beard off, and he'd done a bit of a ticky tour around south and that, and he had fingernail polish on and that.
And I'd taken all my clothes, and Tina was out there in the public eye. She was out there in Queenstown, Te Anau, and they didn't know who I was. But my partner did, and she basically asked me to leave the farm to find my own way in life. The secret was out. There was no waiting for the knock on the door and shit. Who the hell's that? I better go and change before they find out that I'm a tranny. So that was really a big release. I went to see my son and his wife and explained what was I proposing to do. And basically their main query was, what were they going to tell my grandkiddies? And I says, well, they call me Pops now. Why don't they call me Poppy?
Kids are very accepting of anything, you know. You treat them like adults and explain things to them without being silly, and they understand.
The process of change. Well, the first is de-hairing the body, then growing the hair from one side and extending that out. And the comments I used to get, oh, you're starting to look like a girl. Well, thank you. Secretly. I got prostheses from overseas, so I had boobs, but every time I leant over or did something, they jiggled out or fell out. Most embarrassing. Don't want a boob bouncing on the floor, do you? No. Upsets a lot of people. Buying shoes was my biggest dilemma in the transition, because I have large feet and you can't get large feet shoes in New Zealand. So I have to send to America. You get them in the country and they don't fit. Shank. You can't send them back. Yeah, that was most depressing. To become transgender in this country, you must have 2 psychiatric and 1 psychologist's report. I think the worst part of that was going to the first psychologist and being who I was. I knew who I was, but I wasn't sure whether I met the criteria.
Those are things that are, you know, quite clear, like having lived as a woman for at least a year if you're a man, having proof that you've actually integrated into society in that process, not just sat in your house wearing a dress.
I passed all requirements and fulfilled what I needed to do. I've just recently come back from overseas from having the full operation. My daughter-in-law, Kirsty, and myself flew into Phuket. We had a bit of a look around, so we had a day before I was due for my op. It wasn't the surroundings or that I was going there for. It was the ability of the surgeon to do the operation. And of course the cost was a lot cheaper than what it is to get done here.
Because we were in a foreign country, there was a lot of communication issues with the nurses, and I think if she'd been there on her own, she would have been very, very lonely.
It was surprising. Getting the willy cut off was not painful at all. It was getting the boobs done. Like being hit by a freight train. I could tell you there, I wouldn't go through that again. I developed pulmonary embolism, blood clots on the lungs. As soon as I got back into the country, I was put into Ashburton Hospital for a week while they investigated what was wrong with me. And yeah, doctors there said I was lucky to actually live through the flight. But hey, I'm here. One of the things I felt really hard to get used to was going in the women's toilets. I was waiting for the toilet police to tap me on the shoulder. I don't know whether they're out there yet or not, but that was really scary. Being masculine or male has its benefits. Something I discovered when I first transed. I felt the vulnerability of being a woman.
I can remember her telling us about sitting outside a coffee shop and looking at the people inside before she would go in.
Now, if I go anywhere, I have to be aware of my safety. Not to say I can't do anything about it. I still have the strength of a male, but there's a psyche about it. The only drawback is that now I've actually changed gender. They still have issues with him and her, and Tim and Tina.
I'd forget, but I'd call him young lassie. Just say, oh, that's okay, young lassie, yeah. And then I get away with it, so.
And I have to keep sort of whipping the stick sometimes and just promptly reminding them. Tina's been out for 2 years now. There's hand movements now that Tina has that Tim never had. Tina is very in your face and can be quite OTT, over the top. Whereas Tim apparently was very quiet and reserved. Tim was afraid to be out there. Tina's not.
Tina's come through as a lot more softer personality. She's a lot more in tune with her spiritual side.
It seems to have the ability to draw people out and give them a new experience, a new way of thinking about other people. And that's what I feel that I enjoy so much about my life. If I hadn't have gone and had that operation, for whatever reason, I would have regretted that, because it meant that I would still be the person I was before, and that person was not truly happy. That person had a lot of issues to deal with, and trying to find out who that person really was. And now I have found out and able to carry through to this point in my life. I would not go back. I would not change that for one moment.